Today we'll be making children's wear and we are going to be learning how to cut and sew this cute and adorable ball skirt that you are seeing on your screen from start to finish. Hi, my name is Oluwato Singh. In case you're hearing my voice for the first time and you're welcome. To all my returning subscribers, you're also welcome. Thank you so much for always stopping by my channel. Thanks for always coming back to watch my videos. Thanks for all the comments, all the likes. I see all of them and I take none of them for granted. Like I mentioned earlier, in this video, we are going to be learning how to cut, and so it's going to be a very detailed video, and this video is going to be absolutely beginners friendly. It's going to be on how to cut and sew this ball skirt that you are seeing on your screen. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. For this project, I used Mikado, but you can always use any fabric of your choice. But I chose Mikado because of its texture. It's a little bit strong. Then I used net. This is strong net, but not too strong. This is like moderately strong net. It's not like this other net that is so soft. It's a little bit stronger than the other one, like you can see. So I would suggest you use this type of mesh. So that net is going to be the second and the third layer underneath the Mikado. Then I used this strongest net. This net is very, very strong. Then I used lining. So this skirt is going to be 5 layers in total. The Mikado first, then 2 layers of net, then another layer of that strong net, then another layer of lining. This makes it 5 layers in total. And basically, the measurement you need to measure on any kid or on any child at all to achieve a skirt like this is just the waistline and the full length. So I'll be cutting my Mikado first, which is the first layer. I'll be folding this into eight like a 360-degree flay depending on the length. The length of this baby, the full length is 22, and this skirt is going to have band of 2 inches. And you know that this skirt is also a gathered skirt, so whatever I'm cutting has to be bigger than the waist, which is 22. After folding my fabric into eight like this, I'm going to put two up. This two is like the band. Then I'll proceed to measuring our full length, which is 22. I'm going to be adding 1.5 inch. Half inch is for joining to the band, and 1 inch is for folding the down of this my skirt. So you can see that I'm starting my measurement from the down, like I turned my tape rule upside down. Reason being that this skirt has gather. So however wide I can get is the quantity I'll be using. So just go back to the top and measure the way I'm measuring. Measure whatever you have on this side and then on the middle. Then on the other side, this is just so that my flake can come out perfect, like the arc is going to be even. Then you come back to measure what you have on the waistline. What I have here is 5 and quarter. When I multiply this by 8, because my fabric is on fold of 8, it gives me like 44. That means I've succeeded in using like times 2 of our waistline, because our waistline is 22 and our full length is 22. So I've succeeded in using times 2 of our waistline. You can now proceed to cutting this out. I hope my explanation is clear. So this is it for the first layer, which is the Mikado. The next layer I will cut is the mesh, and the mesh is going to be like 2 to 3 inches shorter than the first layer, which is the Mikado. So I'm going to fold my net or mesh, however way you call it, is the same thing. I'm going to fold my net the same way I folded this my Mikado. I'll fold it into eight. Like I'm going to fold all my fabric and fold. This fabric it has length of 60. So I'll be folding all this length of 60 can fold. And then instead of measuring, I'm just going to bring back my first layer and place it on top of it. Just make sure that it's 3 inches shorter than the first layer, and then you mark the tip, that's the waistline, or you just cut it out the way I'm doing. When you are done cutting it out, you remove the first layer, you measure what you have here, you take that same measurement at the middle, you take it on the other side as well, then you proceed to cutting it out. This is the second layer of the skirt. For the third layer, you are still going to cut this same mesh. It's just that it's going to be 1 inch shorter than the first one. So I folded my fabric into it just as we've been doing, and then I placed number 2 on number 3. I placed layer 2 on layer 3, and I cut it out. I made sure that layer 2 is 1 inch longer. Then I cut this out as well. We've succeeded in cutting 3 layers from the 5 layers that I used for this skirt. The next thing to cut is my strong net, and this is going to be like 5 to 6 inches shorter than number 3. So I'm just going to fold into it just like I've been doing, and then I'm going to measure number 3 minus 5 to 6 inches. Then I'm going to cut that on my mesh. So for this particular mesh, I'll be adding an extension of 3 to 4 inches. This is going to be like straight cutting, which I'll just split. I'll pleat it round the lower part of the strongest mesh. This is just to make it more voluminous. Then to cut the fifth layer now, which is the lining. The lining is just going to be 1 or 2 inches shorter than number 3, not than number 4, than number 3, in a way that is going to cover number 4. Like the lining will cover that strongest mesh. So it has to be longer than the strongest mesh, and it will be like 2 or 3 inches shorter than number 3. So again, I folded my fabric into it and then I cut it out, and that is it for the cutting of the flay. For the band, since our waist is 22, I cut 24. 1 inch is going to be for zip allowance on both sides. Then the wideness is 4.5 inches. On fold of 2 inches, it will end up giving me 2 inches wide. Then I just proceeded to cutting the belt. To start sewing now, when you cut a flare like this, everywhere is going to come out not opened, like nowhere will come out opened. So I'm just going to open it up myself, and I don't necessarily have to open it from up to the down. I'm just going to be opening it up to 12 inches. So I'll mark 12 inches and then I'll cut it open from up to 12 inches. After doing this, I'll proceed to gathering my flay. I used gather's foot here, but if you don't have access to gather's foot, you can just run your gather stitch and then you pull. The normal way we do gathers, the manual way we do gathers. I gathered this into 24 because our waistline is 22 plus zip allowance 24. Then you pick up layer 2, do the same thing, open up 12 inches and you gather it into 24 also. Then you pick up layer 3 and do the same thing, open it up and gather it. Now this is the extension I spoke about that I was going to add to the strong mesh. So I just added this pleated part. If you try this hack, you would see that your ball dress or ball skirt will come out fuller than it used to come out. If this strong mesh, whatever the length you are targeting, just reduce it by 3 or 4 inches and add these gathers or plating to it instead. It will make it come out fuller than it's supposed to be. So I gathered that as well. Then for the band, you are just going to turn. I added interfacing to the band because this fabric is kind of fraying, so I had to add interfacing so that it doesn't start pulling out. So you'll be turning both sides just like I'm doing. Turn this side. The right side has to face right side before you can turn. When I was done turning, I flipped it to the right side, and this is what it's looking like at this point. I just proceeded to giving that a good press, and then I weaved the edge. If you don't want to weave or if you did not weave your edge, you can just notch the middle. But because I weaved it already, I didn't want to notch. I just had to use that chalk to mark the middle. So after marking the middle, you are going to pick up your first layer, which in my case is Mikado. It can be any fabric of your choice. You are going to notch the middle of that as well. You'll be pinning the two notches together. That's middle for the band and middle for your first layer. You pin it together and then you start stitching this your first layer on your band. You're going to skip like half inch, like the flare is going to be like half inch longer than the band on both sides before you stitch it together. So I did that. When I was done with the first layer, I picked up my second layer, which is this mesh. Notch the middle as well, pin the two notches together, then you start attaching your mesh on the first layer and the band. Do the same thing to the third layer and repeat the same thing to the strongest mesh, which is the fourth layer. Just notch the middle, then you stitch it down just like we did for the rest of the layers. The next thing to do after this is to flip your skirt to the opposite direction. We've been fixing all our layers on this direction, so you flip it to this opposite direction just like I did. Then you pick up your lining. You are going to be turning all the joining now, so you are fixing the lining in opposite direction. So just notch the middle of your lining and then you fix it round. When you are done doing this, your skirt will come out looking like this at this point. All the rough edges will be concealed. All the stitches will be concealed because the lining is just going to cover everything up. So when you open up your lining, the inside is going to be like this, but it will not show because it's already covered. The next thing to do is to turn my zip allowance. To turn my zip allowance, I'm just going to push my lining up, just as you can see that my lining is up. Now the remaining four layers, you are going to stitch them down first, one side at a time. So I stitched for this side, I'm going to stitch for the other side, the four layers excluding the lining. When you are done stitching, you are going to neatly put your two sides together just like I'm doing, and then you are going to stitch upward with like 2 or 2.5 inches. This is just like a way to create a channel where you can conveniently turn your zip allowance. So I stitched mine up with 2.5 inches, and when you are done stitching, it's going to look like this when you open it up. You can now proceed to turning. This is what the right side will look like when you are done stitching. You can now proceed to turning your zip allowance on both sides. So just flip the lining to cover the right side of the skirt, and with that half-inch allowance that we left when we were attaching our flare or our layers on the band, you are going to turn your zip allowance on both sides. So I proceeded to doing all of this, and when I was done turning one side, it came out looking like this. You can see that all the rough edges are concealed already, and this side is looking as neat as possible. So I'll repeat the same process to the other side, and when I was done doing that my skirt came out looking like this at this point. You can see that everywhere is neat and all the rough edges are concealed. The next thing to do after this is just to fix your zip. I proceeded to fixing my zip. So just measure the actual waistline on the band, and whatever is remaining is going to be the zip allowance. You fix your zip on that. After fixing my zip, I sewed my belt and then I made my bow. I attached it on my skirt. Then I just embellished the front waistline with this beaded applique. After all being said and done, my skirt came out looking like this. You can see that this skirt is so cute and adorable. Thank you so much for sticking with me from the beginning of this video till this point. I hope this video has been helpful to someone. If it has been helpful to you, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you have any question, do not forget that the comment section down below is open to all your questions and your thoughts. For the lower part of this dress, I weaved mine. I weaved the lower part of the strong mesh. I weaved the lower part of the lining, and you can just fold yours. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.